How are you? Sorry. My name is Michael, and this is my talk for Ignorance is Breach. First, I'm going to start off with, like I said, my name is Michael Klein. I go by, my handle is Aptex. I am also one of the organizers for this event, which has been an awesome experience in itself. I work as a security engineer at an MSP. For those of you that don't know what an MSP is it's essentially it's a third-party IT for all the small, medium-sized businesses. That means we get involved in a lot of companies' IT infrastructure, setting them all up and getting it all in place, and then managing it for them going on after that. I also have a side business where I help other small businesses with small projects, and I help a lot of, for lack of a better wording, local grandparents that don't know how to do their computer stuff. I try to cut some time out and help them get acclimated and get their stuff secure. Now, when I first got involved in the security industry, this talk's gonna be a little bit different because the thing that got me pulled in was all the stories. So instead of a deep dive into, how to do this, or different readings that you can get with this tool, or how to accomplish this task more efficiently, this is one of those horror stories that essentially got me hooked in and wanting to do security because it was cool. It was crazy to hear the things that go on and how you fix them and basically uncovering how it all happened to begin with. So, often in the security space, we hear horror stories about offensive security professionals encountering issues in regards to the scope of work, whether that be unintentional. Sorry. Bear with me, I swear. Whether that be unintentional oversight and testing occur during testing that occurs with testing resources outside the scope of work for a security assessment, or that scope of work being too vague and leaving room for misinterpretations. This is commonly a focal point in the security landscape. However, this is not always the case. Sometimes people disregard standard practices for their own convenience. A few years back, when I was working at another MSP, we had brought in a new staff member. This employee was supposed to be handling compliance-related matters for all of our clients. After a significant security incident, we realized that this wasn't a great fit. This is that incident. All right, sorry, I had to do something funny there. So the way it all kicked off is we received an email at around 9 p.m. on a Friday evening. The email was from the SOC service of one of our larger clients, expressing concern about changes that had occurred in their network that they knew nothing about, and it had been proven that those changes were conducted through a tool set that we had deployed on their network. Along with that email, we also got a phone call from the site manager of that location to our manager expressing extreme concern. We weren't exactly sure what was going on at that point. We just knew that there were concerns, some changes had happened to the Active Directory that nobody knew about, and they wanted to know what was going on and why. So at about 9:10 p.m., I get a call from my manager, and he's saying, "Hey, something big's going on. I know none of us are on call at this point, but we need to figure this out, and we need to figure this out now." So I ended up reaching out to two of my coworkers that I had worked with for a couple of years, and we hopped in to try to figure out what had happened and why it had happened. One of the first things that we knew to look at was that client's Active Directory, because the initial alert that the SOC got was that a new domain admin profile had been created in the directory that was completely untalked about and completely undocumented in any of our documentation. And on top of that, a new rogue remote connection program had been installed on their server that they were not aware of. Those were only the start of the things that we found. I hopped in and started going through all the logs of our RMM software, which is remote management software. That's how we connect and manage those clients' networks. First thing that we could see is, it was strange, but we couldn't see everything that was happening in the networks like we traditionally could. And we could see that part of the logs had been hidden from all of the staff except for the general manager, who had a global admin account for that service. During that investigation, the changes that we found were numerous. And like I had said, we were only alerted to this initial breach because that SOC service had reached out to us to try to figure out what was going on. We were worried, to say the least. We were completely unprepared for this, didn't know what was going on, thought that this new employee had been doing everything as we had trained and practiced doing, but it quickly became apparent that that was not the case. We got in, we logged in, checked the Active Directory, and found a rogue admin account, just like they had said. We quickly deactivated that, and then quickly went and uninstalled the remote connection software. And then we had to continue to comb through and see what other changes were made. Were there other clients affected? Were there other software installed throughout other people's networks? And unfortunately, there was. We ended up finding between 10 or 12 other clients that had had a domain admin profile that was added into their Active Directory without any documentation, any conversation, any information shared, not only with us, but with the client themselves. Nobody knew anything about this, and there was nothing documented about it anywhere. Now, working in an MSP is a little bit different than working internal IT somewhere. In the fact that these systems that we're managing for them, they're not ours. They're not our computers, they're not our networks, they're not our directories. These are all property of the client. We're helping them manage them. So we don't have like the unfettered access to, make changes and not let them know or not document all that. All that has to come with precursors. There has to be a conversation. Things have to be scheduled. Everybody has to be in the loop. And the reason for that is to avoid things like this exact situation. Now, like I said, we had found profiles that we didn't know existed. We had found software that we hadn't deployed, and we found that this had been rolled out on multiple clients now. Like I had alluded to before, we realized that something else that also happened with our tool set were a lot of these changes were no longer being were able to be seen by any of our technicians. There was only the main management account that could see them, or the main manager's account that could see them, which is another problem because we all work together. Especially in an MSP, you go, one person might do one thing in a network, and then somebody else might come behind them for another project. At this location, we weren't like expressly in charge of one of those networks. So we had to proceed to comb through all the Active Directories for all of our clients, and then comb through all of the remote management logs. Sorry. And trying to figure out exactly everything that had been deployed and done. We tried to look through there's a section where you can set up automated scripts, and all those were blind to us, like I had been saying, which isn't normal. After a good deal of digging, we were able to find through a roundabout way that we could see, even though we couldn't see the scripts and what they did and when they were set to go off, we could see a list of scheduled tasks that would include the changes that were set up and be input onto the computers to be carried out. Luckily, we were able to go through and revert a lot of these changes. We were able to disable and remove that domain admin account, and then we were able to write our own script to go through and pull back that deployed remote connection software. Like I said, it may sound like it's not that big a deal, but it is. I know a lot of us here work in security and work in IT, and a domain admin account gives absolutely unfettered access to everything in that client's network. Now, some of these clients have government contracts and have strict regulations they have to follow. That's why we have brought this individual in. However, I just want to express something first. After all of our digging, we don't believe that this person was trying to maliciously attack any of these clients. That wasn't the case at all. He was just set in his ways and wanted to make everything easier for him, even after being told not to deploy some of these changes. Along with the rogue profiles and the rogue applications deployed, we found, after figuring out the roundabout way to review the scripts, we found several other scripts that included restarting and rebooting security systems on a daily basis that were never supposed to be rebooted without clear cutout scheduling so that the client is aware of the security being down briefly. Unfortunately, when we got this call from the SOC, after we went through our initial investigation and disclosed all of the things that we found, they weren't happy, clearly. There was threats of lawsuits, there was inquiries into the hiring practices and procedures for the company I was working for, and honestly, rightfully so. But it wasn't necessarily the practices of the employer that are so much at fault. It's the practices of this single individual that tattered the reputation and name of that company. He had gone in and made express changes without any approvals. He had gone in, deployed software that was licensed to himself and no one else, and then created all these profiles that had no documentation and no history to them that we could track at all. We did end up reviewing that hiring process and changing the way we handle a lot of these situations and our procedures to avoid things like this. Now, this individual had been hired into a role where he was supposed to be being trusted to do all the compliance review and setup and all that for these clients. After a deeper dive into this individual's practices, we realized that, like I had said earlier, it may have just not been the right fit. Now, all of these changes that he made inherently weren't necessarily bad things. All of these changes could have been made in a different way with the client being approved, the changes being discussed internally with not just our technicians, but our management as well, and the client needed to be talked to. Had all of these happened, these changes could have been fine. But by going out and making the decision to make these changes on their own, this individual put the company at risk. By not documenting any of the changes he made, it also confused all of his coworkers because all of our accounts should have been in our documentation, but they weren't. There was nothing there. And so that leads us to believe, oh, something may have happened. This network had been breached. When the reality of it is, yeah, the network was breached, but it was breached by one of our employees. The incident could have resulted in legal action had we not taken action as quickly as we had and discovered and were able to revert all of the changes that happened. And like I said, new limitations were put on the accounts of the employees until the company could know without doubt that they can trust these individuals not to do things like this again. This is just one of those stories of an incident that never should have happened, but did. And I just wanted to outline how it could have been handled differently and not resulted in that big client now needing to go and notify all of its clients that they have had a network breach, which not only makes us look bad as their IT, it also makes them look bad like they don't have their stuff together, which wasn't the case. It's important for us to remember that the systems that we work on as an MSP are not our own. They're the property of the clients, and those clients need to be consulted before any of these changes are made. And ultimately, any of these changes also need those clients' approval, not just have been talked about. Any of these changes made also need to be documented so the rest of your team is aware of any big changes in the network and any big changes on a client's infrastructure. Because when these things are not done, chaos will occur. And then we are the ones that will be liable for this chaos. Any questions? All right, well, thank you guys all for your time, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference. Yeah, I'm sorry, did I miss a question? My bad. Who had a question?
Oh, there's a pass here. I saw him.
Yes, I think.
You guys, the organization get operation probably 3 years late if you want that.
They got some money out.
The employee that made those changes?
Yeah.
No. We had to go and figure everything out that he did and dial it all back. It was a lot of log review and complete combing through of the Active Directory and all the carried out actions to see what changes have been made in the last week and why. And then cross-referencing that with some of the hidden scripts that we found in the RMM tools.
Did you make any changes to different logging for other users?
So, and I'm sorry, I should have been more clear at this part. The logging actually was okay. That's why we were able to identify it through the management account. What the individual had done was he went and changed the permissions of who could view what he had set up in the tool set. He made it so that none of the technicians could see any of the scripts that he had set up and deployed, and that they couldn't see any actions that were carried out by his account. And like I said, I don't think it was necessarily a malicious attempt. I think it was more of an attempt of he thought he knew better than everybody else, and that he wanted to do it his way, and that his way was the only way.
Is there anyone else that you about?
Yes, and that was his answer. He said this is how it should be done, and that he doesn't care. Which is why we realized that that situation is the
This is probably
good.
in your opinion, what's like the biggest takeaway that you learned from the
Honestly, the biggest takeaway is that I could take away from it is that the client, kind of what I went over, the clients need to be talked to. I mean, I never would have done what he did. I regularly practice talking to the client, make sure they're fully informed and aware of anything I'm about to do, and make sure that I have it in writing that they're okay with it before I would do anything. The fact that he didn't think he had to was mind-boggling to all of us, to be honest. Good.
But when you're those noticed, expected ways of doing work, they actually written down and
Just set a timer
where he's onboarding and that's hard as well change.
To be fully honest and transparent, I'm not sure what his hiring process was, because I wasn't the manager or anything like that. He had come in, technically this was to be a step above the position I was in the company. He was supposed to be leading into the management role. So during all of the training I had experience of that company, yeah, there was documentation that everything needed to be documented for one, and that the clients all had to approve it as well. Like it was never we just make changes that we wanted to without talking to the clients and getting their approval. Whether there were actually guidelines or like written out, I believe there was in the employee handbook. But I'm not sure if he had specifically been walked through that step by step. However, with the way he responded to it, once we had figured out, because he then needed to be interviewed about the entire situation, he didn't seem to care. So that leads me to believe he knew he wasn't doing anything wrong, he was just doing it for his own convenience, if that makes sense. Which is sad, because people put a lot of trust in us to help them manage the things that they don't know how to do. So the least we can do is try to be upfront with them and make sure they're aware in language that they can understand of what's going on, not just changes being made without any conversation. Any other questions? All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time. And like I said, I hope you have a great rest of your conference.
Thanks, Michael. Just to grab everybody's attention for 1 minute, there's a minor schedule shift from what is on the website, what you guys might have downloaded earlier. before lunch, we were supposed to have a brief address from the university president, Dr. Manhar Singh. He had a bit of a schedule issue on his end. He's actually going to be giving that at 2:30 in a few minutes in the next room over. So the talk schedule is going to be temporarily paused to squeeze that in, and then we're going to resume with things in the order that they're on the schedule shortly thereafter, probably in about 10 minutes. So if y'all wouldn't mind just kind of making your way over there once you finish up here, and then we'll resume the normal talk track afterwards. Thanks.
Friday, we're going to the next room. I don't want to get out.